Water dripped from her chin, staining the cheap fabric of her grey dress dark. The sound of high society laughter echoed off the marble walls, sharp and cruel. Victoria St. Clair, the queen of the fashion world, stood over her with an empty crystal glass and a sneer that could cut glass. She thought she had just put a nobody in her place. She thought she had won, but she didn't look at the door. She didn't see the man walking in the man who owned the building, the brand, and half the city. And most importantly, she didn't know that the woman she'd just humiliated was the only person in the world he answered to. Karma isn't just coming, folks. It's walking through the front door, and it's wearing a tuxedo. The grand ballroom of the Hotel Pierre on Fifth Avenue was buzzing. It was the launch of V.S. Klein, the ultra-exclusive fashion line by Victoria St. Clair. If you weren't wearing silk that cost more than a Honda Civic, you didn't belong here. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old money. Chandeliers the size of small cars glittered overhead. And in the middle of this sea of diamonds and tuxedos walked Hera. Hera Vance looked out of place. She was wearing a simple heather-grey cotton dress. She wore comfortable sneakers and her hair was tied back in a messy bun. She wasn't dirty, but she was undeniably casual. Too casual. She clutched a brown paper bag against her chest, checking her phone with a confused expression. She had just come from a pottery class in Brooklyn. She wasn't here for the fashion. She was here because her husband Julian had sent her a frantic text. Forgot my heart medication at the penthouse. Meeting ran long. Can you bring it to the Pierre emergency? Hera, being the loving wife she was, didn't think about changing. She grabbed the pills, jumped in a cab, and ran inside. As she navigated through the crowd, trying to find the VIP section, she bumped into a waiter. A single champagne flute wobbled, but didn't fall. "Oh, excuse me," Hera said softly, steadying the tray. The waiter sneered, looking her up and down. "Staff entrance is in the back, sweetheart, and you're late for the dishwashing shift." Hera blinked. "I'm not staff. I'm looking for Julian Thorne." The waiter let out a bark of laughter. "Mr. Thorne, the billionaire investor? Yeah, and I'm the King of England. Get lost before security drags you out." Hera sighed. She was used to this. Julian was private. Their marriage was private. To the world, Julian Thorne was the most eligible bachelor in New York. To Hera, he was just the guy who snored when he had a cold and liked extra cheese on his pizza. She stepped away from the rude waiter and moved toward the velvet rope guarding the VVIP lounge. That's when the music stopped. Or rather, that's when she walked in. Victoria St. Clair. She was stunning in a predatory way. She wore a crimson gown that looked like it was painted on her skin, and diamonds dripped from her neck. She held court in the center of the room, surrounded by influencers and minor celebrities. Victoria's eyes scanned the room, drinking in the adoration until they landed on the grey smudge in her perfect picture, Hera. Victoria stopped talking. The sycophants around her stopped talking. The silence spread like a virus until the whole ballroom was looking at Hera. "What?" Victoria's voice rang out sharp and clear. "Is that doing in my breathing space?" Hera froze. She looked around, hoping Victoria was talking to someone else. Victoria marched over her heels, clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. She stopped 2 feet from Hera, wrinkling her nose, as if she smelled something rotting. "I didn't know the homeless shelter was doing field trips to Fifth Avenue," Victoria said, loud enough for the back of the room to hear. The crowd giggled. Nervous, cruel laughter. "I'm just looking for my husband," Hera said, her voice steady. She gripped the paper bag tighter. "I need to give him this." Victoria looked at the crumpled paper bag. "Husband, oh honey, did he wander in here to steal silverware, or is he the janitor?" "My husband is Julian Thorne," Hera said. The room went dead silent for a second. Then it exploded into laughter. Victoria laughed hardest of all. She threw her head back, her diamond earrings catching the light. Julian Thorne. The Julian Thorne. Darling, Julian Thorne dates supermodels. He dates royalty. He doesn't date dumpster chic. Victoria took a step closer, invading Hera's personal space. Now get out. You're ruining the aesthetic of my launch, and frankly you smell like clay and desperation. I'm not leaving until I see him, Hera said, her chin lifting. It's a medical emergency. Security! Victoria screamed, snapping her fingers. Two large men in black suits started moving towards them. But Victoria wasn't done. She wanted a show. She wanted to prove her dominance. She looked at the glass of sparkling mineral water in her hand. You know, Victoria purred a cruel smile, twisting her red lips. You look thirsty. Maybe that's why you're hallucinating that you're married to a billionaire. Don't, Hera warned, seeing the glint in Victoria's eye. Oops, Victoria said. She didn't just spill it. She threw it. The cold water hit Hera's face with shocking force. It soaked her hair, ruined her simple grey dress, and dripped down onto her sneakers. The ice cubes clattered onto the floor. Hera gasped, wiping the water from her eyes. She stood there dripping wet in the middle of 500 of New York's elite. Flashes went off. People were filming. Phones were raised like a firing squad. Look at that, a woman in the crowd jeered. A wet rat. Go back to the sewer, a man shouted. Victoria smirked, handing her empty glass to a passing waiter. There, now you're at least clean enough to be escorted out by the trash chute. Get her out of my sight. The two security guards grabbed Hera by her arms. They weren't gentle. Let go of me, Hera struggled. I have his medication, if he doesn't take it. Save it for the police, lady. One guard grunted, dragging her backward. Victoria turned back to her guests, spreading her arms wide. So sorry about the interruption, everyone. Just a little pest control. Please enjoy the champagne. V.S. Klein is about perfection, and we don't tolerate imperfections. The crowd cheered for her. They worshipped her cruelty. Hera was being dragged toward the main double doors. She felt humiliated, small and angry. But mostly she was worried. Julian had a heart arrhythmia. He needed those pills when the palpitations started, or he could faint, or worse. Wait, Hera screamed, digging her heels into the carpet. Check his pocket. Call him, just call him. Shut up, the guard hissed. They reached the massive oak doors. The guard reached out to shove them open, preparing to throw Hera onto the cold New York sidewalk. But the doors opened from the outside first. And they didn't just open, they swung wide with authority. A hush fell over the room instantly. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Standing in the doorway was a phalanx of men in suits. Not security guards, corporate security. The kind that carried concealed weapons and wore earpieces that connected directly to the Pentagon. And in the center of them stood Julian Thorne. He looked impeccable. A midnight blue tuxedo, a jawline that could cut stone, and eyes that were usually cold and calculating. But right now, those eyes weren't cold. They were wide with panic. He was clutching his chest slightly, his face pale. Hera! He rasped out, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. He looked around the room, ignoring the models, ignoring the investors, ignoring Victoria. Then he saw her. He saw his wife, held by two of his own hired security guards. He saw her wet hair. He saw the water dripping from her dress. He saw the tears of humiliation welling in her eyes. The panic in Julian's face vanished. It was replaced by a rage so dark, so terrifying, that the security guard holding Hera's left arm instinctively let go and took a step back. Julian didn't run to her. He walked. A slow, predatory walk. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. He walked straight past Victoria St. Clair without even acknowledging her existence. He stopped in front of the remaining guard, who was still gripping Hera's arm. "Let go," Julian said. His voice wasn't loud, it was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. The guard dropped Hera's arm as if it were burning hot. "Mr. Thorne, sir. This woman, she was trespassing, she claimed—" Julian ignored him. He took off his tuxedo jacket and wrapped it around Hera's shivering shoulders. He used his thumb to gently wipe a droplet of water from her cheek. "Did they hurt you?" he asked, his voice breaking with tenderness. Hera shook her head, handing him the soggy paper bag. "I brought your pills. They're a little wet, but the bottle is sealed." Julian took the bag, but he didn't look at it. He looked at the water stains on her dress. He looked at the crowd. And finally he turned his gaze to Victoria St. Clair. Victoria was standing there, her mouth slightly open. She looked from Julian to Hera, her brain trying to process the impossible. "Julian," Victoria let out a nervous laugh, adjusting her diamond necklace. "Julian, darling, you know this. This creature—" Julian turned his body fully toward Victoria. The look on his face made the champagne in the guest's hands tremble. "Creature," Julian repeated. He put his arm around Hera's waist, pulling her flush against his side. He looked at the crowd, then back at Victoria. "You just assaulted the co-chair of the Thorne Foundation," Julian said, his voice rising, booming off the walls. "You just humiliated the majority shareholder of the St. Clair Fashion Group." Victoria froze. "What? And most importantly," Julian stepped forward, his eyes blazing fire. "You just threw water on my wife." The gasp that went through the room sucked all the oxygen out of the air. "Wife?" Victoria whispered, her face losing all color. "But she looks like the only thing in this room that is real." Julian cut her off. "Hera prefers a private life. She prefers to stay out of the spotlight so she can focus on her charity work. She is the kindest, most humble soul I have ever met." Julian picked up a glass of red wine from a nearby table. He swirled it gently. "And you," Julian said, staring at Victoria. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Victoria held up her hands, trembling. "Julian, please. It was a misunderstanding." She looked poor. "How was I to know?" "You judge people by their clothes?" Julian asked. "Fine. Let's judge you by yours." "What do you mean?" Victoria stammered. "I mean," Julian said, checking his watch, "that dress you're wearing, the one you claim to have designed. My wife designed that pattern 3 years ago in her sketchbook. You stole it." "Lies!" Victoria screeched. "And," Julian continued, ignoring her, "this building, the Pierre My Holding Company, bought it this morning. We have a strict policy against tenants who assault our family members." Julian turned to the head of security, the real security. "Throw her out." Victoria St. Clair didn't move. She couldn't. Her brain was short-circuiting. "You can't do this," she stammered, her voice pitching up into a hysterical squeak. "I have a contract. I have the lease for the ballroom for the next 6 hours. The press is here." "My press." Julian pulled his phone out of his pocket. He didn't look at her. He was busy texting someone. "The contract has a morality clause, Victoria. Section 4, paragraph B. Any behavior by the lessee that brings disrepute to the venue or its owners is grounds for immediate termination." He held up the phone. On the screen was a live feed of the incident recorded by one of the guests, already trending on Twitter. "You threw water on a woman you thought was poor," Julian said calmly. "That's disrepute. You're evicted. Now." "This is ridiculous," Victoria shouted, looking around for support. "Someone help me. He's crazy. She's a nobody. Look at her shoes." But nobody moved. The influencers who had been practically worshipping Victoria 5 minutes ago were now frantically deleting their selfies with her. The investors were stepping back, creating a wide circle around her, as if she were contagious. In the world of the elite, you don't bet against Julian Thorne. Hera, wrapped in Julian's oversized tuxedo jacket, finally spoke. "Julian, you don't have to kick her out. Let's just go home. I'm tired." Julian looked down at her, his expression softening instantly. "I know you are, Elle, and we will go. But not yet." He turned to a man standing in the shadows of the room, a man with grey hair and thick glasses. "Mr. Henderson," Julian called out. "Step forward, please." The man walked forward nervously. "Who is that?" Victoria demanded. "Get away from me." "This is Arthur Henderson," Julian announced to the silent room. "He is the chief financial officer of the St. Clair Fashion Group, Victoria's own CFO. Victoria blinked. "Arthur, what are you doing?" Arthur Henderson wouldn't meet Victoria's eyes. He looked at his shoes. "I'm sorry, Victoria. Mr. Thorne, he made an offer." "What offer?" Victoria screamed. Julian answered, "I bought his shares, and I bought the shares of your silent partners in Hong Kong, and the debt notes from your bank in Zurich." Julian took a step closer to Victoria. "As of 4 p.m. today, while you were getting your hair done, I became the majority owner of your company. I own the name V.A. Sline. I own the inventory. I own the trademark." He pointed to the banner hanging above the stage with Victoria's name on it. "I own your name, Victoria." Victoria's knees gave out. She stumbled back, clutching a table for support. "No, that's illegal. You can't just buy everything." "It's called a hostile takeover," Julian said, his voice ice cold. "And it was very expensive. But watching the look on your face right now, it was worth every penny." "Why?" Victoria whispered, tears finally spilling down her perfectly powdered cheeks. "Because I was rude, because of a little water." "Because you are a bully," Julian said. "And because you hurt the one person who actually has the talent to save this dying brand." Julian turned to the crowd. "Does everyone here know who EV Designs is?" A murmur went through the crowd. EV Designs was an anonymous designer online who had been making waves for years, mysterious, brilliant, and incredibly sought after. "That's my wife," Julian said, gesturing to Hera. "Hera Vance. Evie." The gasps were audible. "And do you know why Victoria's new summer collection looks so much like Evie's sketches from last year?" Julian asked. He looked at Arthur Henderson. "Arthur, tell them." Arthur sighed. "Victoria. She ordered us to scrape Evie's digital portfolio. She stole the designs. She thought Evie was just some college student who wouldn't fight back." Victoria looked like she was going to be sick. "So," Julian said, "I'm not just evicting you from the building, Victoria. I'm firing you from your own company. You are removed as CEO effective immediately. Security escort Ms. St. Clair off the premises and take her company credit card before she leaves." "No!" Victoria shrieked as the guards, the same ones she had ordered to throw Hera out, approached her. "You can't do this to me. I am the brand. I am the icon." "You're a tenant," the guard said, grabbing her arm. "Let's go, Mom." As Victoria was dragged, kicking and screaming, toward the exit, her heels dragging on the floor, the crowd didn't help her. They didn't cheer for her. They parted ways, and as she passed, a young waiter, the one she had yelled at earlier for bringing the wrong water, stepped forward. He held a tray with a single glass of ice water on it. As Victoria passed, the waiter tripped. Splash. The water hit Victoria right in the face, ruining her makeup and soaking her crimson gown. "Oops," the waiter deadpanned. The room erupted in laughter. But this time, it was the laughter of justice. Julian looked at the waiter and winked. Give that man a raise. The silence inside the Rolls-Royce Phantom was heavier than the chaos they had just left behind. The city lights of Manhattan blurred past the tinted windows, streaks of gold and red against the rainy night. Hera sat in the corner of the leather seat, still shivering slightly, though the car's heater was blasting. She had taken off Julian's tuxedo jacket and was wringing out the hem of her grey dress. Julian watched her from the other side of the seat. His jaw was tight, a muscle jumping in his cheek. He wasn't angry at her. He was consumed by a cold, burning fury at himself. He picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over a contact. "I'm sorry," Hera whispered, breaking the silence. Julian dropped the phone. He moved across the seat instantly, taking her cold hands in his. "Hera, stop. Don't you dare apologize. You brought me my medication. You saved me from a potential heart episode. You are the hero of this story, not the victim." "I embarrassed you," she said, looking down at her sneakers. "I looked like a mess. And now tomorrow morning, everyone is going to be talking about Julian Thorne's trashy wife." "Let them talk," Julian said darkly. "By tomorrow morning they won't be talking about you. They'll be talking about the end of the St. Clair empire." He poured a glass of water from the car's console and handed it to her. "Drink. You're in shock." As Hera sipped the water, Julian's phone buzzed. It was his PR manager, Samantha West. Julian put it on speaker. "Report Samantha." "It's bad, Julian." Samantha's voice came through sharp and fast. "Victoria isn't going quietly. She just went live on Instagram. She has 3 million followers and she's spinning this hard." Julian's eyes narrowed. "Play it." Samantha's voice was replaced by the tinny sound of a recorded video. "I just don't know what I did wrong." Victoria's voice sobbed through the speakers. She sounded broken, fragile. "I was just trying to protect my guests. This woman, she charged at me. She was screaming. I was terrified. And then Julian Thorne, a man twice my size, came in and physically threatened me. He stole my company. He stole my life's work just because I didn't recognize his mistress." Hera gasped. "Mistress, she knows I'm your wife." The recording continued. "He's a billionaire bully. He thinks he can just buy women and buy silence." "Boycott Thorne. Please. I'm just a girl trying to survive in a man's world." The video cut off. "It's trending," Samantha said. "The internet is split. Half the people saw the video of her throwing the water and hate her, but her die-hard fans... They're doxing us, Julian. They're calling for a protest outside Thorne Tower tomorrow morning. They're painting you as a misogynist tyrant and Hera as a deranged stalker." Hera dropped her head into her hands. "I knew it. I ruined everything." Julian took the phone. "Samantha, kill the feed. Release the security footage from the hotel lobby showing Hera entering peacefully, and release the audio from the ballroom." "We can't," Samantha said. "The ballroom cameras don't record audio. She said, regarding the specific insults." Julian hung up the phone. He looked out the window. The car was pulling up to the underground entrance of their penthouse building. "She wants a war," Julian whispered to the glass. "She wants to play the victim." He turned to Hera, his eyes softening but his resolve hardening like steel. "Hera, I need you to be brave. I need you to do something you hate." "What?" she asked. "I need you to stop hiding," Julian said. "Victoria is using your anonymity against you. She's calling you a stalker, a mistress, a nobody. The only way to kill a lie is with the truth." "You want me to go on TV?" Hera looked terrified. "No." Julian smiled, a dangerous glint in his eye. "TV is for amateurs. We're going to hit her where it hurts. We're going to open the vault. We're going to release your original sketchbooks from 5 years ago. The ones with the dates stamped on them. The ones that prove Victoria didn't just steal a dress, she stole her entire career from you." Hera hesitated. Those sketchbooks were her private world. "Do it," she said softly. "I'm tired of being afraid of her." The next morning, the conference room on the 40th floor of Thorn Enterprises was like a war room. Julian sat at the head of the long obsidian table. Hera sat next to him, wearing a sharp, tailored navy blazer, a stark contrast to the grey dress from the night before. She looked powerful. Across from them sat Victoria St. Clair. But she wasn't crying now. She was smug. Next to her sat Marcus Sterling. Marcus was the kind of lawyer who made devils check their contracts. He was known as the Butcher of Wall Street. He wore a suit that cost more than most houses, and had a smile that didn't reach his dead, shark-like eyes. "Let's cut the pleasantries," Marcus said, opening a leather folder. "My client, Ms. St. Clair, has been wrongfully terminated, publicly defamed, and suffered emotional distress due to Mr. Thorne's hostile and aggressive takeover. We are suing for $200 million. Julian didn't blink. "She threw water on my wife. She verbally assaulted her. She violated the morality clause of her lease." "Allegedly," Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "What we can prove is that you used your financial leverage to steal a company worth millions for pennies on the dollar. That's market manipulation, Mr. Thorne. The SEC might be very interested in that." Victoria leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "You thought you won, Julian. You thought you could just embarrass me and I'd disappear. I built V.S. Klein. It's me." She looked at Hera. "And as for you, the little artist, we have witnesses ready to testify that you were drunk and belligerent at the party." "That's a lie," Hera shouted, standing up. "I don't even drink." "Sit down, Hera," Julian said calmly. He didn't look worried. He looked bored. Julian pressed a button on the intercom. "Send him in." The heavy doors opened. A man walked in. He wasn't a lawyer. He was a tech specialist holding a laptop. "Who is this?" Marcus asked, irritated. "This," Julian said, "is the reason you're going to drop this lawsuit, apologize, and leave the country." The tech specialist plugged the laptop into the projector. A spreadsheet appeared on the screen. "Victoria," Julian said, pointing at the screen. "You claimed you designed the summer solstice collection yourself, correct?" "Of course," Victoria scoffed. "And you claimed you never saw Hera's work?" "Never." Julian nodded to the tech. The screen changed. It showed a series of emails. "These are emails from your personal account, Victoria," Julian said. "Dated 3 years ago. Subject line, The Vance Project." Victoria's face went pale. Marcus Sterling stopped smiling. Julian read the email aloud. "Find this Hera Vance girl. She posts on the art forum, Canvas Underground. Hack her account if you have to. Download everything. Her ideas are genius. I want them. And if she ever tries to claim them, bury her." The room was silent. "How?" Victoria whispered. "How did you get that? That's a private server." "You used the company Wi-Fi." Julian shrugged. "I own the company now. I own the servers. I own the emails. I own you." Julian turned to Marcus Sterling. "Now, Marcus, about that lawsuit. If you file it, I release these emails to the press. Not only will Victoria lose the case, she will be charged with intellectual property theft, corporate espionage, and fraud. She'll go to prison." Marcus closed his folder slowly. He looked at Victoria with disgust. He was a shark, but he didn't swim with sinking ships. "You didn't tell me about the emails, Victoria," Marcus said coldly. I deleted them," Victoria stammered. Nothing is ever deleted, the tech guy said, smirking. Marcus stood up. Mr. Thorne, consider the lawsuit withdrawn. My firm no longer represents Miss St. Clair. Marcus, you can't leave me, Victoria screamed, grabbing his arm. He shook her off and walked out. Victoria was alone. We're not done, Julian said. The emails prove you stole the designs, but they also prove something else. Something much more painful for my wife. Hera looked at Julian confused. What do you mean? Julian looked sad. Hera in the emails. Victoria mentions a contact, someone who gave her the password to your private cloud storage. Someone who sold you out for a check. Who? Hera asked, her voice trembling. Julian clicked the remote. A photo of a check appeared on the screen. It was made out for $10,000. The name on the check was Sarah Miller. Hera gasped, covering her mouth. No, that's impossible. Sarah is my best friend. She was the maid of honor at our wedding. Victoria started laughing. It was a manic, broken sound. Oh, finally. The look on your face. Yes, Sarah. She hated you, darling. She hated how talented you were. She hated that you married a billionaire while she was waiting tables. It was so easy to buy her. 10 grand. That's the price of your friendship. Hera felt the room spinning. The betrayal hurt more than the water. It hurt more than the insults. Get out, Julian said to Victoria. Get out before I forget I'm a civilized man. Victoria stood up, trembling. She had lost her lawyer, her leverage, and her company. But she had managed to stab Hera one last time. Enjoy your friends, Hera, Victoria spat as she walked out. Hera felt numb, the high-stakes drama of the boardroom having melted into a sickening dread. Victoria St. Clair's venomous exit line, enjoy your friends. Hera had lodged itself deep in her chest like a shard of ice. The image of the check, the dollar amount, the name Sarah Miller. It wasn't just corporate espionage anymore. It was a profound personal violation. Julian had offered to handle it, to send his legal team to cut off Sarah financially, to make her disappear from the social register. But Hera needed to do this herself. She needed to look into the eyes of the woman who had stood beside her at the altar, who knew her deepest dreams and her most private anxieties, and understand why. She drove her modest sedan, the same car she'd owned since before meeting Julian, to the Westerly Coffee Bar in Brooklyn. It was their place. They had spent countless hours here, sketching, complaining about jobs, and planning imaginary futures. The very sight of the chipped wooden table where they always sat twisted the knife. Hera arrived 10 minutes early. She sat alone, staring at the printouts Julian's tech specialist had given her. There was the $10,000 check, the payment from Victoria St. Clair's business account, and worse, a detailed time-stamped log showing the exact moment Sarah had logged into Hera's Canvas Cloud account, using the password Hera had given her years ago, followed by a massive data transfer. It was methodical, cold, and undeniable. When the bell above the door chimed, Hera's heart hammered against her ribs. Sarah entered a flurry of brightly colored scarves and oversized bags. She looked exactly the same, lively, effortlessly cool, perpetually stressed. Hera, oh my God, girl, look at you! Sarah rushed to the table, her voice bright and theatrical. She didn't wait for a greeting. I mean, VS Line EV. Designs, I have been screaming. The whole world knows you're a genius. I knew it back in college, when you were sketching in the margins of philosophy books. I told everyone, I swear my phone hasn't stopped buzzing. Sarah slid into the booth opposite Hera, reaching across the table to squeeze Hera's hand. Hera recoiled instantly, pulling her hand back and smoothing the wrinkle on her trousers. Sarah's bright smile immediately evaporated. Whoa! What's wrong? Did the billionaire husband finally start acting like a billionaire? She tried to laugh, but the sound was too brittle. Hera didn't speak. She slowly, deliberately pushed the printouts across the table. She laid them out like evidence in a silent trial, the check, the transfer logs, and finally the damning email from Victoria mentioning the Vance project and the informant. Sarah looked down at the paper. Her face went through a rapid series of transformations, confusion, dismissal, panic, and finally, a terrible, defeated stillness. "What is this?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the hiss of the espresso machine. She still tried to play dumb, a last, pathetic attempt at self-preservation. "Julian is trying to frame people, isn't he? He's probably mad you brought up his medication and wants to make an example of someone." "Stop," Hera said, her voice dangerously quiet. She didn't raise her voice. The control was far more devastating than any shout. "I know this handwriting, Sarah. I know this bank logo. And I know your passwords better than you know mine, because I created half of them for you. The transfer log is undeniable. You logged into my Canvas Cloud account on the evening of June 14th, 3 years ago, and downloaded my entire portfolio, all the unpublished works." Hera leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Sarah's. "You didn't just give Victoria my password. You gave her my life's work, and you took $10,000 for it." Sarah's carefully constructed composure finally shattered. She covered her face with her hands, letting out a choked sob that quickly morphed into a bitter, accusatory sound. "It wasn't that simple, Hera," Sarah cried, pulling her hands away. Her eyes were red, but they weren't wet with guilt. They were blazing with resentment. "It was only $10,000. Do you know what $10,000 means to someone who has been staring at eviction notices for 3 years? Do you know what it's like to work 3 jobs just to pay off interest on student debt while you're living in a penthouse and sketching clothes just for fun?" The resentment, which Hera knew had simmered beneath the surface for years, was now boiling over. "You married the golden ticket." Sarah continued, her voice rising now, drawing hushed glances from the few other patrons. "You didn't even try to be successful. You tripped and fell into a marriage with a billionaire who showers you with diamonds and funding for whatever cute hobby you pick up this month. You won the lottery. I had to work. I had to hustle." Hera absorbed the brutal assault, the raw, ugly truth of Sarah's envy. "You think I didn't work? I worked on those sketches when you were sleeping. Those designs were my therapy. They were my hope before Julian. They were going to be my stepping stone. And even after I met Julian, I didn't stop working on them. And I shared them with you. I trusted you with my most vulnerable self." Hera's voice wavered as she recalled countless acts of kindness. "When you were fired from that gallery job, who paid your rent for 3 months? Who bought your plane ticket home when your mother was sick? Who co-signed your car loan? I never asked you for a single cent back. Sarah, I did it because I was your friend. That's the problem, Hera." Sarah slammed her fist on the table. "You were always the martyr, Saint Hera. You made me feel small. Every time you bailed me out, it just reminded me how far ahead you were. How easy it was for you. Victoria offered me a way out. She promised me a management position at VS Klein. She said you wouldn't even miss the designs because you had the Thorn money now. I needed to feel like I earned something. I needed to feel like I had leverage over you for once." Hera shook her head slowly, the last vestiges of hope for a rational explanation dying inside her. "She lied to you. She never intended to hire you. She used you, Sarah, just like she used my designs. And you let her, because you weren't my friend. You were my competitor, and a jealous one at that. Hera gathered the papers, meticulously folding them. The raw fury had faded, replaced by a devastating sense of finality. "I called Julian's office before I came here," Hera stated, her voice now utterly devoid of emotion. "He is aware of everything. He is aware of your financial difficulties. He is aware of the debt. Because of what you did to me, because you allowed a woman to humiliate me on a global stage, you have put yourself in a dangerous legal position." Sarah looked terrified again, all the venom sucked out of her. "No, Hera. Please, I can fix this. I can testify against Victoria. I'll tell the lawyers everything about the email chain. I'll give Julian everything he needs. Just don't let him ruin me. I need a job. I need money." "I don't need your testimony," Hera said, standing up. The contrast between her simple, elegant stance and Sarah's desperate slump was stark. Julian has everything he needs to bury Victoria. He doesn't need a witness who can be bought for $10,000. Hera looked down at Sarah one last time, not with anger, but with sorrow for the death of a beautiful history. "We are done, Sarah." Hera concluded, her voice a solid block of ice. "I am deleting every memory of you, every photo, every text, every shared secret. Don't call me. Don't text me. If you ever try to contact me or Julian, or if you attempt to use my name for financial gain, again, Julian's lawyers will take the necessary action. This conversation is over." Hera turned and walked away from the booth, leaving Sarah Miller sobbing hysterically into her hands, surrounded by the remnants of a shattered friendship. As Hera stepped out onto the sidewalk, the cold Brooklyn wind hit her. She felt hollowed out, but simultaneously impossibly lighter. The weight of the hidden betrayal, the years of subtle resentment and suspicion she hadn't realized she was carrying, had finally lifted. A sleek black town car was waiting at the curb. Julian stepped out instantly, his face grave. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He simply opened the door for her. Hera collapsed into the rich leather interior, the tears she had held back finally spilling over. Julian climbed in beside her and pulled her into his arms. He didn't offer advice or judgment. He simply held her tight, his presence a solid, unmoving rock in her suddenly chaotic world. "She's gone," Hera choked out into his tuxedo jacket. "I know," Julian whispered, gently stroking her hair. "The poison is gone, Elle. It's over. It's done." He reached into his inner pocket and retrieved a small, elegant box wrapped in emerald velvet. He opened it. Inside, nestled on a white cushion, was a stunning antique gold and diamond brooch, a perfect miniature of the first dress she had ever sketched, the one Sarah had stolen. "It's time to start creating new memories," Julian said softly. "The past stays in the past. We move forward together." Hera looked at the brooch, then at her husband. She nodded, wiping her eyes. The pain of betrayal was still sharp, but the realization that Julian was always there, always protecting her, made the future bright. The time for sorrow was over. It was time for the show. New York Fashion Week. 18 weeks later. The tent at the Manhattan Piers was transformed into a vision of stark, minimalist luxury. The runway was made of polished black onyx, reflecting the ceiling lights like a still, dark lake. The air was charged with nervous energy and the scent of expensive lilies. This was not just a fashion show. It was a cultural event, the culmination of the biggest scandal of the season. The banner above the runway was simple, elegant and uncompromising EV couture. The room was packed tighter than a velvet glove. Every major fashion editor, every key buyer and every ruthless critic was present. In the coveted front row sat Eleanor Beaumont, the legendary, notoriously severe critic for Haute Monde magazine. Beside her, Julian Thorne, his presence a silent declaration of war, or rather a declaration of unwavering support for his wife. Backstage, Hera Vance was vibrating with terror. She wore a simple, sleeveless black jumpsuit, practical, invisible professional. She checked the hem of a shimmering silver gown, one last time, her hands unsteady. "I can't breathe, Jules. I think I'm going to throw up," she whispered into her headset, turning to Julian, who had slipped backstage for one last moment of calm. "You are going to take the stage and accept the applause," Julian said, his voice low and firm, grounding her. He adjusted the tiny diamond stud in her ear. "Look at the boards. Everything is perfect. Every model is prepped. Every light cue is timed. This is you, Hera. This is the truth, beautiful and undeniable." He looked her straight in the eye. "And remember the promise you made me. This collection is not about revenge. It is about reclamation. Go and reclaim your genius." 5 seconds to start," the stage manager barked. Julian kissed her hard, a swift, electric assurance. "See you on the other side, Mrs. Thorne." The house lights dropped. A low, resonant cello chord vibrated through the floor. The show began. The first model emerged, not striding aggressively like VS line models, but moving with a quiet, powerful grace. She wore the foundation dress, a structured, architecturally precise piece in a deep matte navy. It was a statement EV couture is built on solid ethical ground. Eleanor Beaumont, the critic, leaned forward, her silver hair catching the light. She didn't write a single note. She simply watched. The collection unfolded like a narrative. There was the betrayal black pieces, sharp with geometric cuts representing the pain of the past months. Then came the reclamation green, symbolizing growth and new life, flowing chiffons and optimistic silks. The audience murmured the murmurs, quickly shifting from curiosity to genuine awe. Hera's work was technical, yet deeply emotional, a perfect fusion of artistry and wearability. It was everything VS Line had pretended to be. The penultimate sequence was the Thorne dynasty, set gowns that were powerful, regal, and fiercely feminine. Julian watched his wife's vision come to life, a small, proud smile touching his lips. He saw Hera in every thread, every fold. Then came the finale. The music shifted to a slow, triumphant orchestral piece. The runway lights focused on a single point as the final model stepped out. This was the liquid light gown. It was a dress of such exquisite beauty that gasps rippled through the front row. It was a floor-length sheath made of a proprietary, custom-developed fabric that seemed to be woven from glass and moonlight. The color was a shifting, translucent silver gray, a direct, powerful reference to the cheap, wet cotton dress Hera had worn during her humiliation. But this dress was the antithesis of cheapness. It moved like liquid, reflecting the lights like thousands of tiny, shimmering diamonds. It symbolized not the pain of the water throne, but the resilience of water itself, unbreakable, flowing, eternal. Eleanor Beaumont, for the first time in 10 years, closed her notebook, laid down her pen, and began to slowly, deliberately applaud. The crowd surged to its feet. The applause was deafening, a tidal wave of genuine adoration and recognition. Hera Vance had delivered not just a collection, but a masterpiece of vindication. Backstage, Hera wept, quickly pulling off her headset. "It worked, Julian, it worked." But the triumph was about to be interrupted. As the final model reached the end of the runway, a commotion erupted near the entrance reserved for VIPs. A woman burst through the velvet curtain, stumbling onto the runway. It was Victoria St. Clair. She was unrecognizable. Her once perfect hair was stringy and unkempt. She wore a stained, oversized trench coat, clearly several sizes too big, and her eyes were wild, glazed with manic fury and desperation. She had clearly bypassed security, fueled only by a desperate, toxic need for attention. The music stuttered and died. A terrible, consuming silence fell over the elegant crowd. "You stop," Victoria shrieked, pointing a trembling accusatory finger at the liquid light gown. "That is mine, everything is mine, you stole it." She stumbled down the runway, her shoes scuffing the expensive onyx, ruining the perfect reflection. She was a horrifying, desperate smear on Hera's pristine moment. Julian was already on his feet, signaling his own security team, but before they could reach her, Victoria was halfway down the runway, screaming directly at the curtain where Hera was about to take her bow. "You whore, you stole my life! You married that pig to ruin me! I am the brand, VSC, is me!" She lunged forward, not toward the models, but toward the area where she knew Hera stood, driven by a final fatal compulsion to physically destroy the woman who had replaced her. But before she could take another step, 3 figures in crisp, unmarked black uniforms stepped out from the side access door. They were not Julian's security. They were plainclothes officers from the NYPD's Financial Crimes Unit. "Victoria St. Clair," the lead officer shouted, pulling out a badge. "You are under arrest." Victoria froze mid-lunge, her mouth hanging open. "Arrest for what she is, the criminal. She is a liar. She stole my designs." The officer moved quickly, efficiently. "You are being charged with multiple counts of wire fraud, grand larceny, and felony embezzlement of funds from the St. Clair Fashion Group, a corporation now owned by Thorne Enterprises. We have the warrants." As the officer read the formal charges, the crowd of elites finally understood the depth of the drama. This was not a social squabble. This was financial ruin and criminal justice. Victoria was cuffed. She fought spitting and screaming obscenities, trying to leverage her last shred of perceived status. "Get your hands off me, Eleanor. Tell them I know your editor. I am a celebrity." As the officers dragged Victoria past the front row, she tried to catch the eye of Eleanor Beaumont. The critic, however, simply averted her gaze, writing a single final note in her book. To the fashion world, Victoria St. Clair had become utterly invisible, worse than trash. She was irrelevant. The moment the doors slammed shut behind the disgraced former owner, the venue plunged back into silence. Hera, stepping out onto the runway, took the microphone handed to her by the stage manager. She looked at the scuff marks on the floor, then at the stunned, expectant faces of the audience. A small, defiant smile curved her lips. She echoed the words of her tormentor from months earlier, but with a different kind of power. "I am so sorry about that brief interruption, everyone," Hera said, her voice clear, calm, and utterly in control. She paused, looking out at the triumphant collection behind her. "Now," she continued, her voice swelling with emotion, "where were we?" The entire audience erupted. People screamed her name. The models cheered. The music started again, a magnificent, joyous crescendo. Julian leapt onto the stage, ignoring the press flashes, and swept his wife into a triumphant, lingering kiss. The cameras went wild. Hera Vance, the quiet artist who had been drenched and dismissed, stood on the pinnacle of the fashion world, bathed not in thrown water, but in the pure, brilliant light of her own hard-won success. Her rebirth was complete. And that is the story of how the queen of fashion lost her crown to the very woman she tried to destroy. Victoria St. Clair had wealth, power, and influence, but she lacked the one thing money can't buy: character. She judged Hera by her grey dress and her messy hair, never realizing that true value isn't worn on the outside, it's carried on the inside. In the end, Hera didn't need to shout to be heard, and she didn't need to be cruel to win. She just had to be herself. It's a powerful reminder for all of us. Be careful who you step on while you're climbing the ladder, because you might just meet them on your way back down. If you enjoyed this satisfying story of instant karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets us know you want more stories like this one. And now I have a question for you. If you were Hera, would you have forgiven Sarah for selling you out? Or would you have cut her off just like Hera did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a daily dose of drama. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.